People always want to know, Kris, what financial books should I read on the game of money? And if you want to get better at making money, I've got to tell you, there's a whole host of books that you can read. But in the late 90s, a book came out from these two PhDs that studied who became millionaires and how did they do it. And the book is called The Millionaire Next Door. And it has a lot of counterintuitive logic and information that applies just as much today. So today we're gonna do a deep dive on The Millionaire Next Door and basically determine how are most millionaires made.
One shot, now the future is yours, go!
A long time ago, I learned that if you want something, you should study how it's been made. For example, a lot of people are subscribers. You may be a subscriber on this channel saying, Kris, help me become a multi-millionaire. And you know what? This is a great place for you to hang out. And today we are studying millionaires. This actually comes from a very popular book of the late 90s called The Millionaire Next Door. I'm gonna break it down for you, give you the Cliff Notes version, and ultimately help you understand how millionaires are made. And then we're gonna judge the snot out of it as if it's good or bad. The Millionaire Next Door is a book written in 1996 by two PhDs, Thomas Stanley and William Danko. These were economists, and what they wanted to figure out was how American millionaires actually made their money. So they did a study. They started surveying, they started finding all the people that were technically millionaires, and they wanted to know, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you do it? It's like that guy on TikTok or wherever that follows people around in the really fancy supercars and says, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? Well, it's that same kind of concept. Aren't you a little bit curious where millionaires come from? As the authors studied people, they basically found that they all fell into one of two categories that they basically called PAWs or UAWs. The authors used the term prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWs, meaning the people that were hyper committed to saving their money and setting it aside so they could accumulate that $1 million, or under accumulators of wealth, the people that kind of had underwhelming results and why they never became millionaires, and how different these two financial habits make a huge difference over the course of a lifetime. Basically, you have the people that are good with money, the people that are awful with money. I kind of picture it sometimes like a pendulum with that knife on the bottom that swings left and swings right. And you're always one of two different people. On the left side, you have your people that are your accumulators. These people typically, they are your 401kers, they are your IRAers, they are your house payofferers, right? But then on the other side, you have these people that are like really irresponsible. They're kind of abusers of money because the moment it comes in, it's already spent. And over here, they basically abuse that. And I think that's what these two academics, these two PhD economists are basically trying to say is, as we studied people's financial habits, we basically studied those who became millionaires and those that never did. And ultimately, prodigious accumulators are those that maybe follow a little bit more like that Dave Ramsey methodology of like, we have money because we don't spend money, and that's the mantra of our life. And yet I think there's many people that maybe never become millionaires that are in pursuit of that action plan. And I'm kind of wondering if this is the far left and this is the far right, I wonder what is right down the middle. That's part of what we're exploring in today's video. So let's talk first about the accumulators, right? They basically live below their means. They live in a modest house. We've got famous ones out there like Warren Buffett, literally that eats breakfast at McDonald's and still lives in the same house 30 years later. The dude has given billions of dollars away in his philanthropy, and yet he hasn't really increased his lifestyle. He's kind of the poster child for what we're talking about here, because when it comes down to it, all PAWs, those prodigious accumulators, they live below their means, they avoid buying luxury goods, and they invest consistently, producing wealth over time. It kind of reminds me a little bit of my parents because basically my in-laws bought into their company, worked there for like 30 whatever years, eventually retired, the company was sold, and they made millions of dollars, like $5, $6, $7 million. So they have a comfortable retirement, but they bet it all on red, and their entire life, they never really spent money, and that's why they always said that they had money, and that's one way of life. And there's a part of me that wonders in the back of my head, is there anything missing when you live life just always pinching the pennies, setting it aside? Aren't there memories to be made? So there's something about this lifestyle which feels really prudent, but there's something about it that kind of creates some FOMO for me, like, aren't you missing out on a lot of life? The book also goes into greater detail on the idea of wealth instead of just income. Many of the financially irresponsible UAWs had high incomes, but little to no wealth. They spent their income on luxury goods rather than an appreciating investment like the PAWs did. Thus, even doctors and lawyers are not necessarily guaranteed millionaires. You can have a really fantastic income, but still have nothing to show for it if all you're really good at doing is making money, even good money, but then just spending it. So financial authors like Nassim Taleb have had a lot of extreme criticism for this works, and for good due cause. Best-selling author and investor Nassim criticized The Millionaire Next Door as only demonstrating the survivors of the very flawed standard method of savings instead of focusing on scalable growth. And I would use different words. I would say scalable investing, right? The whole problem with accumulation is that the average American will make $3 to $4 million over the course of their working life, but they need around $3 to $4 million to retire on. Now, why do I say that? Well, in your working life, if you're making $50,000 to $100,000 a year, how much can you really save? And yet, if you were to give $3 million to your financial advisor and they were to use the 4% rule, meaning how much interest off of the money you gave us can we predictably give you? 4% of $3 million is what? Like barely $100,000 a year? So if you don't make $3 or $4 million in your working life, how are you supposed to give $3 million to your financial planner? You see, that's the problem. That's something that we all should have been told in high school, that when you go to college, you get a degree and you work for somebody else. There's no way you can save enough money in your working life to give yourself the retirement that you want. It means that you're going to have to do something outside the system. And more of us really need to know this. And of course, there are some other downsides. The Millionaire Next Door method puts its followers at risk should a recession come along like we're experiencing right now, because it focuses very heavily on investing in stocks, bonds, and managed funds. It's this whole idea that you work really hard, you set some money aside, you 401k it, you put it in the IRA, you put it in the bank, you put it in a mutual fund, an index fund. And the problem is that all you're ever doing is earning single-digit ROI. And yet in the book, here's what's interesting. A majority of the millionaires, you know what got them across the finish line? It wasn't their stocks and bonds and 401ks. It was over 30 years, the equity that they acquired in their homes. That's where more than half of their net worth came from. When I read the book, that was the one stat that stood out. The majority of these people became accidental millionaires because they just held real estate long enough. What's the lesson for you and I? If one home produces more net worth than a lifetime of savings in a 401k and IRA, then why aren't we buying more homes? Why not 5 homes? Why not 10 homes? I remember the first time I cleared over $100,000, it looked like this on a single property. And I was like, man, if I just do that 9 more times, I'm gonna be a millionaire. And I just thought, why don't more people just own 10 homes? They'll retire with a few $1,000,000. And most people don't because it's scary, it's different, and it's not what the financial system talks about. And do you know why they don't? Because they don't get paid to do that. They get paid to manage your money. So even though they know it will never get you where you want to go, they're okay doing it because it still pays for their living. Do you know where all this money comes from? It comes from this, real estate, not little wooden things, but actual real houses. In fact, in real estate, it's very common to earn on the low side a 25% annual ROI. Now the 401k and IRA are producing maybe 6-7% on the 30-year average. So 25% is about 4 times more money. But because of compound interest, it turns into a lot more money than a couple $100,000. Because right now the average person at retirement in their 60s has $255,000 between 401ks and IRAs. But if you took $50,000 from retirement, 401k, IRA, equity in a home or savings, and all you did for 20 years was grow it in real estate producing 25%, you'd wind up with $4.3 million in 20 years. And if you earn what I do, that number is more than triple that, which is why I have people that watch my social media, and if they feel so inclined, they'll partner with me. They'll bring the money to the table. I've got my team of 200 experts. I go into the top 5 markets nationwide, and I do everything. I don't need your credit. I don't need anything else. We partner up, you bring your money to the table, and I own real estate all over the world with people just like that. When it performs like this in this partnership, it creates the ability for you to actually create the kind of retirement that you're looking for. So if you like the possibility of retiring with millions of dollars versus hundreds of thousands of dollars, then click the link below and learn about partnering with me. You're gonna find not just the details, but my track record. My reputation, my track record, that is my everything. And it's the reason why people partner with me today. So click the link, learn about it, talk with my team, and what they'll basically do is say, hey, if you've got some money sitting in the market, 401k, IRA, equity in a home, and you'd rather put some of that in real estate, earning more money, but potentially at way less risk, then fill out that information, get with them, and then who knows? If we end up partnering, you get my cell phone, we get a chance to connect with each other, we get a chance to build something real together, some very real wealth. And if you'd like to get in on my $2 billion real estate track record and be some of my next success, click that link and I'll see you there. I wonder if Dave Ramsey read The Millionaire Next story when he was young and decided to create this entire accumulation program and methodology. It's no surprise that I am not a fan of what Dave Ramsey teaches, and if you'd like to know why, click right here and see the difference between our two philosophies, and you decide for yourself.